Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Coach Matt, EliteThrowsCoaching.com, coming to you today to talk about problem number 10 in our 10-part video series talking about the common faults and corrections in the rotational shot and the discus. Now, today's video is 100% strictly about discus, and it's how the discus is released off the hand with a lot of wobble and ways that you can correct that wobbling as it comes off the hand. If you're looking for something talking about shot put release and how to release the shot put correctly, if you're a rotational shot putter, go underneath the glide series to the last video there that talks about how to put the shot in your hand, how to push and flick the shot correctly, and all that good stuff. Now, if you are having trouble releasing the discus and it is coming off the hand weird, meaning it's coming out of the back of the hand, or it's coming off the middle finger or the ring finger, or it's not flying straight, like it's flying at an angle or anything like that, even if it's not kind of coming off the correct part of the finger, I'm going to put a link right up below. That link is actually to a video that I did a few weeks ago that talks about how to properly hold the discus, how to wrap the fingers over the top correctly, how to treat the discus like a clock, so there's kind of a left side of the discus, a right side of the discus, where to put the knuckle, how to put the knuckle over the top of the discus, and all that good stuff. I'll put that link right up below. Just click the card. Today's video is not going to be talking about actual placement of your hand on the discus. Today's video is going to be talking about the wobble that is created as you are throwing and starting out of the back of the circle. It's all about position of the hand, if your thumb is up, thumb is down, all that good stuff, okay? So we're going to take you out in the circle. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this. It's kind of weird. I'm going to be using an orange cone, one of those short little dome-sized cones, so that you can see it a little bit better, and that way I don't drop it and kind of make a noise on the video for you guys. But check that out. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, make sure to click that subscribe button right down below and the little bell notification icon next to it as well. That way you'll be notified of all of our new videos that come out on the channel. Alrighty, so we've got one of these little plastic dome cones. This is something that I like to use because I can kind of put my hand through the middle, kind of Spider-Man grip, like Spider-Man grip it, just to show you guys positions of hand on top and kind of what everything is supposed to look like. Now, the thing that we want to talk about today is not how the discus is released off the fingers. Again, click the card that's going to be popping up right there if you do have any questions on how to wrap your fingers on the discus, why the discus might be coming off your middle finger instead of the first finger. All of that, as far as holding the discus and releasing the discus correctly with the correct spin, is in that previous video that I did maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, okay? The video today is just talking about releasing the discus and kind of how the path of the discus through the circle is really sometimes what throws things off and gives athletes trouble getting it to fly correctly. So it's amazing to me sometimes how you have really high level throwers and maybe 1 out of every 10, 1 out of every 20 throws comes off their hand, and it's really wobbly and it's really kind of fluttering through the air as they release it or as it's flying out into the sector. To give a couple of examples, there are some athletes here in New England that throw in that 175 foot range and above. I've seen them throw live this season, and you know, if there's 3 throws in trials and then 3 throws in finals, plus the warm-ups that they take before trials and sometimes 1 or 2 warm-ups before finals, you're going to get about 10, 11, maybe 12 total full throws that have a little bit of energy behind them. And 1 or 2 out of those throws come off their hand and they're super wobbly. They're kind of fluttering through the air. And you think to yourself, well, what the heck is going on? Because they do their standing throws, it looks nice and smooth. They do their half turns or their mirror turns or their wheel drills or whatever you call it at your school, and it looks okay. And then they get into South Africans, they get into fulls, when they start moving out of the back of the circle, and then all of a sudden, that discus is flying really weird through the air. It's straight up in the air like this. It's not cutting through the air like it should be. It's straight up in the air. It's flying sideways. It's kind of cutting one way, cutting the other way. There's like some scoopage. It's flying straight in the air. Or the most common is that it's going straight up like this and then lands in that tombstone where it's sticking straight in the ground. Now, a lot of that obviously has to deal with release angle and kind of where their body or where their hand is positioned on the body of that discus. Is their thumb up in the air when they release it? Are they scooping down here and it's getting released straight? Are they coming over the top with it? A lot of that is going to have a negative effect on the flight of the discus and actually how it's angled and how it looks when it's flying in the air. But the thing that coaches and throwers have to realize is that a lot of times that idea of throwing with the thumb up or coming around the top or scooping from the bottom, that actually starts most of the time here in the back of the circle. Okay, so at this point, it should be pretty obvious to you that if we want a nice straight release, and if we want a nice flat release, we've got to keep our hand pretty flat throughout the entire throw. So instead of just saying, hey, keep your hand flat, I'm going to show you some of the most common areas where beginner, intermediate, and advanced throwers are going to do things with their hand to throw off that flatness, to throw off that smoothness, and to throw off that release angle at the end of their throw when they actually release the discus. And the first one is in the very back of the circle. And a lot of times what we see are their athletes will start off in the back of the circle and they'll start to move the discus in this figure 8 position. And they turn the hand upside down as they bring it to the right. They turn it up and over to bring it to the left, and they start doing this figure 8 when they're actually turning the discus upside down and right side up. And now, of course, when they pull it back, if they're right-handed, where's it going to be? It's going to be back here with the thumb up. And then as they go through the circle, they're carrying the thumb up, and what they try to do a lot of times is they try to actually turn the thumb down as they throw. So they know, hey, I'm carrying this thing like a waiter through the circle. I've got the discus almost, my hand underneath it, the discus on top. I've got to turn my hand and try to push the discus flat. And that a lot of times is going to cause a lot of wobble. Sometimes you have athletes that do the same thing in the back, but instead of doing the big figure 8 back and forth where they're turning the hand upside down, they start with the discus flat, and then they pull back and turn it upside down. So they go either thumb up here, or they turn it all the way upside down like this. And then as they come through the circle, the same thing's going to happen. They've got their hand under the discus. And then they're going to carry the discus through the circle, and they're going to try to turn that hand over at the very end to get the discus to fly nice and smooth. Well, obviously the turbulence that you're creating as you turn the hand over at the end is going to cause that discus to flutter and wobble and actually not fly out there correctly. Another very common reason is that an athlete will lose separation and the discus will start to sneak ahead of their hip. Now, a lot of times when this happens, when the discus starts to sneak ahead, the discus will actually stop for a split second. And the athlete will drop their hand, kind of like they're carrying a suitcase or like they're carrying the discus in their hand out to practice. And they'll start to carry the discus through the circle down here by their hip, almost like they're trying to put it in their pocket. So they'll come out of the back, everything will stay nice and flat, the hand will be on top like it should be. They'll pull the discus back, and then they lose separation, turn, and start to carry the discus down here by their butt. And a lot of times what starts to happen is as they drive across the circle, they cast the discus in front of them like this. And that idea of casting the discus is giving that almost like a handshake or like they're bowling the discus. A lot of us teach our athletes to bowl the discus to get it to roll off the fingers. So they come here, they lose separation, and then they do this casting where they cast the discus. Now all of a sudden you're putting a straight up and down movement. So what starts to happen? If it's a straight up and down movement here, they're going to come around and start to lift and scoop the discus thumb up. And that a lot of times is why you see the discus fly either straight ahead instead of flat. It's kind of flying up and down instead of flat. Or you'll see it start to curve and swoop over to one side. Something very common when athletes first start to learn how to do full throws and turn out of the back. Another reason I've been seeing a lot lately is this idea of carrying the discus behind you. Now, there have been some very high-level throwers, some actually back in the 70s and 80s, that carried the discus behind their back. Al Order, actually one of the greatest discus throwers ever, one of the most legendary discus throwers ever, used to kind of carry the discus almost behind his back and then whip the discus around at the very last second. If you look at some older video of him and of some other throwers as well, when they come out of the back of the circle, they've kind of got the discus here. And the discus is almost upside down. And the opposite of being like a waiter is being a waiter but with the hand twisted underneath. And at the last second, they've got to come up and try to lift and flick the discus up in the air as they throw. Well, the same thing's going to happen. Instead of turning the thumb down to release, now they've got to turn the thumb up to release. And that, of course, if their timing is not perfect, it's going to come off the hand and wiggle and wobble and flutter as it flies into that sector. Now, obviously, I could go on for hours just talking about parts of the throw, parts of the circle, where athletes are turning their thumb up and down, or turning it upside down, or dropping it by their hip. But the main thing for you as a coach or as an athlete, if you're watching this, is that we want the discus to stay as flat as possible throughout the entire throw. And that starts with building trust with the implement. Okay? Play with your discus. Throw the discus up in the air. Turn the discus side to side and trust it. Trust that you can put your hand in the correct position on the discus and that it's not going to fly off your hand. Yes, you'll have to turn it up a little bit, but turn it right back over and keep it flat. And if you can do this, if you can just kind of play with your discus, maybe throw your discus up in the air and catch it, and just realize that it will stick to your fingers. Centrifugal force is your friend. If you have your fingers on the discus correctly, if you've got them wrapped over the rim of that discus like you should have them, it's not going to fall out. There's no reason to put your hand underneath. But it comes with experience, it comes with practice, and you need to build that trust. My biggest pet peeve in all of coaching, no matter what event, whether it's shot, discus, hammer, javelin, weight, whatever it is when there's one athlete in the circle throwing and working with the coach, and there's 9 or 10 other athletes just sitting outside the cage with their fingers up their noses, not doing anything. Okay, those athletes should at least be moving the discus back and forth, throwing it up in the air, catching it, kind of throwing it, bowling it back and forth to each other, just going through the motions, just getting comfortable with their discus, so they're not doing this up and down figure 8 thing. They're not carrying it like a waiter. They trust that centrifugal force is going to work. If it can work with this tiny little cone on my hand, discus will certainly work in anybody else's hand, okay? Keep the hand on top. They'll learn to keep the hand flat throughout the entire throw. Turning out of the back, driving across the circle, the mirror turn position in the middle, and finally the release. They won't have the thumb up if their hand is flat through the entire throw. All right, everybody, that does it from here. I am hot and sweaty, as you can tell. Summertime struck today. It was in the 80s, which is gorgeous. It's the beginning of June, so that means it is the off season for a lot of you. So make sure, guys, if you are looking for a great off-season training program, we're going to put a link right here at the end. make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel because we are going to be doing a lot of off-season training videos throughout the summer. We're also going to have some new announcements of a possible new camp happening in Pennsylvania in July, so stay tuned for that. And we also have the link down here for the entire video series that you can watch as you keep practicing during the summer. Good luck to all the athletes going to their regional meets this weekend and going to nationals next weekend. Throw far, have fun, hit some big PRs. Guys, stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell. That way you are notified of all the new videos that come up this summer. Make sure you keep practicing, make sure you keep throwing, and I will talk to you all next week.